You know the legend, the fearless First Lady who saved Washington's portrait as the White House burned around her. A symbol of grace, charm, and an unwavering patriot. But what if I told you the story of Dolley Madison, America's beloved Queen of Washington, took a turn no one expected? That her later years were a struggle against hardship, betrayal, and a kind of hidden poverty rarely spoken of. Get ready to look beyond the history books, because today we are peeling back the layers to reveal the extraordinary and often heartbreaking final chapter of Dolley Madison's life. You won't believe what she endured and how she clung to her dignity until the very end. Dolley Payne Todd Madison was born in 1768 and burst onto the American scene as a vibrant social force. After a tragic early widowhood, she married James Madison, 17 years her senior, and quickly became his indispensable partner. She transformed the First Lady role by hosting dazzling social gatherings that helped bridge political divides in the young nation's capital. Her charm was legendary, earning her a reputation as the Queen of Washington. Side note, it was Aaron Burr who let Dolley Madison know that James Madison had wishes to meet her. Aaron Burr is none other than the man who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Dolley's most famous act of courage came in 1814, as British troops marched on Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. Panic gripped the city. President Madison was away, and Dolley faced a terrifying choice. With the enemy closing in, she famously refused to leave the White House until she had ensured the safety of precious national treasures, most notably the iconic full-length portrait of George Washington by Gilbert Stuart. She instructed her enslaved and free workers to remove the massive painting, telling her enslaved servant, Paul Jennings, "Save that picture. If possible, under no circumstances allow it to fall into the hands of the British." Moments later, the White House was engulfed in flames. James Madison's presidency ended in 1817. The couple retired to their beloved Virginia plantation, Montpelier. They hoped for a peaceful, comfortable retirement. James dedicated himself to compiling his extensive papers, believing their publication would provide a secure financial future for Dolley. However, a dark cloud loomed over their happiness. Dolley had a son from her first marriage. Her son, Payne, was a chronic gambler and alcoholic, racking up enormous debt that James Madison repeatedly paid. Despite his stepfather's efforts, Payne continued to squander money with reckless abandonment. This began a slow, agonizing drain on the family's fortune. Side note, in 1793, Dolley Madison, then Dolley Payne Todd, experienced profound tragedy when her husband John Todd and their infant son William Temple Todd both died from a yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia. She also lost her in-laws during the same epidemic. Her first husband, who was only in his mid-20s, and baby son were amongst the many victims of the outbreak. Dolley and Payne were the only survivors of the family. When James Madison passed away in 1836, Dolley, nearly 70, was left in a precarious position. The sale of James's papers, which was meant to secure her future, didn't happen quickly, and the money wasn't enough to cover the mounting debt left by her son Payne. Dolley was forced to sell off land, property, and even enslaved individuals from Montpelier, a stark reminder of the complexities of the era and the cruel realities of the institution she was a part of. One of those she sold was Paul Jennings, the very man who helped save Washington's portrait. By 1837, Dolley returned to Washington, D.C., taking up residence in a modest townhouse on Lafayette Square. The vibrant socialite, once the heart of the capital, was now struggling financially. Her poverty became an open secret. Friends and admirers would leave discreet donations of money hidden around her home during visits, finding tactful ways to help the beloved former First Lady. In a moving turn of events, Paul Jennings, who had purchased his freedom, would later check in on Dolley. He recognized her plight, occasionally bringing her market baskets full of provisions and even giving her small sums of money from his own pocket. It was a remarkable testament to the human connection forged in difficult circumstances, and a stark contrast, the betrayal she faced with her own son. Dolley clung to her old ways, wearing her signature turban and velvet gown, even though she could no longer afford new ones. It was a way of maintaining the dignified image that Washington society remembered, even as her personal circumstances deteriorated. What always strikes me in later images of Dolley, she is wearing the same outfit over and over. I first thought it must be the same day, but it turned out that they are different occasions. Side note, legend has it that before the burning of the White House in 1814, the First Lady saved some red curtains. Could she have made a dress from them? Some historians and curators suspect that the Empire-style gown, which Dolley Madison owned until her death, may have been from the curtains she salvaged from the White House that fateful evening in 1814. The Greensboro History Museum in Greensboro, North Carolina, features a significant collection related to Dolley Madison, including this infamous red velvet dress and other personal items. Dolley was born near Greensboro, but her formative years were spent in Virginia and Pennsylvania. Despite her hardships, Dolley Madison never lost her spark. She remained a beloved figure, sought after for her wisdom and her wit. She was a living link to the nation's foundings. She continued to receive invitations to Washington's most important gatherings, a testament to her enduring popularity and influence. But on July 12, 1849, Dolley passed away at the age of 81. Her death, unlike her later life, was anything but private. Her funeral was the largest Washington, D.C. had ever seen at that time. Thousands lined the streets, and a procession of 48 horse-drawn carriages slowly moved its way to the Congressional Cemetery. Sitting President Zachary Taylor, along with members of Congress, attended. Government business was canceled for the day. An extraordinary honor for a woman who had never held public office. But Dolley's final resting place was not initially her permanent one. Due to her son Payne's continual financial mismanagement and the family's lingering debt, her body was first placed in the public vault at the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. This vault was a temporary holding place for distinguished individuals awaiting more permanent burial arrangements. She remained in the Congressional Cemetery public vault for nearly 3 years, a surprising limbo for a woman of her stature. Eventually, her dear niece had her moved to her in-laws' family vault in the same cemetery. It wasn't until 1858, 9 years after her death, that her remains were finally moved to Montpelier so she could lay to rest beside her beloved James. Her son, John Payne Todd, survived his mother by 2.5 years. He continued his downward spiral after her death, eventually squandering the last of the family fortune before his own unremarkable passing. He was nearly 60 when he died in Washington, D.C. of typhoid fever in 1852. He is buried in this same Congressional Cemetery. In 1865, Paul Jennings, a freed man, published the first White House memoir. His book is called A Colored Man's Remembrance of James Madison. He died in Northwest Washington, D.C. at the age of 75 in 1874. He was buried at the Columbian Harmony Cemetery in D.C. When that cemetery closed in 1959, the remains of those buried there were reinterred at the National Harmony Memorial Park in Maryland. However, Jennings' remains, along with others unclaimed by their family members, were lost in this process. The whereabouts of his body is unknown. Dolley's beloved niece, Annie, seemed to have chronic health problems. In November 1852, Annie was too ill to attend her cousin Payne Todd's estate sale, where she hoped to obtain more of her aunt's papers, as well as furnishings with sentimental value. Her father-in-law agreed to attend the sale on her behalf, but Annie died, and her father-in-law could not attend, for he was busy placing Annie in the family vault next to her Aunt Dolley. Annie was only 33 years old. Here's a fun fact. Dolley's sister, Lucy, was married twice. First to George S. Washington, the nephew of President George Washington. And after his death, she married Thomas Todd, a U.S. Supreme Court Associate Justice. Their wedding was the first wedding ever held in the White House. Thomas Todd shares lineage with First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln. Dolley Madison's life story is a complex tapestry of triumphs and tragedies, a powerful reminder that even the most celebrated figures face personal battles. She was a woman who, in her later years, embodied resilience, dignity, and the quiet strength of a true survivor. What do you think about Dolley Madison's incredible journey? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to watch all our videos from famous funerals to diving into the archives to find generations of history.